Welcome to the Beyond Cinema studio up here at Tiff, Erik Skjoldbjærg. Firstly, congratulations on having Pioneer here. I know you, especially with Insomnia, it was a huge success, and then it was adapted to an American film. With this one, is that part of the reason why you made this in English with Americans as well? Is that you could have the final copy that would be distributed all the way around the world?
You mean like to avoid a remake?
Yeah.
No, first of all, I'd say I'm quite happy about the remake of Insomnia, so I don't have any problems with that. Pioneer is about a certain period in Norwegian history where lots of Americans were there, so it felt organic to integrate American characters into this story.
Yeah, and in terms of that story, I mean, obviously it's such a huge time to consider laying this pipeline to run this oil from off the coast of the North Sea into Norway. At one time, this was considered impossible.
Mm.
Is that something that you've always been fascinated by, the stories of possibility and impossibility, or is this just this particular story grabbed your attention?
I guess artistically, I'm always interested in what seems impossible, and this film shooting it. And portraying people going down to 400 meters, I think that's like 1,200 or 12,000 feet or whatever, seemed like a difficult task, So artistically, I deal with impossibilities because that kind of feels like a challenge. Yeah. As for this story, the Pioneer story, it's such important part of modern history. I think it's a turning point for my culture. It's how we became rich. So, and I wanted to turn back the clock and think, what was it like at that point when we had to overcome a threshold? How deep can you work in the Northern Sea? I was fascinated by that.
And also, like, recreating this time period. What was that like? Was that a time period that you remember fondly as well in terms of fashion and aesthetics?
Yeah, I grew up in the 70s, and I remember what Norway looked like in the 70s, and I was also influenced by American films. I went to see it in the cinema. So, so the 70s is kind of my aesthetic foundation. So.
I thought it was interesting having Jonathan LaPaglia in the role of the Doctor. Obviously, he's an Australian actor, but his brother made a film called Balibo that was here at Tiff a few years ago. And I remember when it came out, it was 25 years after the incident that it portrayed, and yet it had an immediate impact in terms of politics, and the people who were involved in that story ended up getting compensation and getting people charged for war crimes. It was something that happened 30 years ago. And I thought that's something that's super interesting here, is that this is a case that people are still dealing with. That it's still very much an open source of contention as to how these divers were treated, going down to these incredible depths and being used as guinea pigs, essentially.
It's true. It's currently at the Human Rights Court. So the case is very much alive. A film can bring some notice to it, and it might create pressure on the government for compensation, but ultimately, it's hard to tell in which way it's going to influence the case.
But is that a hope for you as a filmmaker, that your film will have some sort of social significance outside of the artistic medium, or do you not think about that at all?
What I think about is how a film reflects the society or resonates in the society I live in, and that's important to me. I'm not the kind of filmmaker who sort of come with messages. I kind of, as a viewer myself, if I watch other movies, I kind of like to be able to make up my mind about things. So the film is made without concluding in every aspect.
In terms of the casting of the film, obviously Axel is a big star in Scandinavia, and of course Headhunters was a big film universally. And then Wes Bentley, has had moments in his career, and he's at another high point now with the Hunger Games. What did you like about each of them that made you want to kind of attach them to the project?
Well, Axel has got a sort of an immediate presence, like a screen presence, and it's just a gift he's got. On top of that, he is a risk taker in real life, so to a large extent it felt like the character, you know, it felt like a perfect fit, and the way he embraced the character and the energy of it, you know, I never regretted that decision. Wes, we got in touch with quite close to the shoot, because supporting roles in a Scandinavian film using American actors is a challenging casting job, you know. So I was just lucky to get him on board. I think what Wes has is he got this feeling that he always, I'm not sure if he's conscious of it, but you always feel like there's something he withholds, like something you can't quite get to, and that creates a dynamic that creates you sort of want to see him more and more.
Yeah.
So I think he's on the rise again.
It did feel like at times like a film from that era, that it had this kind of thriller aspect, you know, the man with the limp, or you know, these sorts of elements that were played along the way. It could have been a Bond film 30 years ago, like, and have some of the elements of a Bond film and the thriller aspect of it. And in terms of, obviously, the two big evils, you have this multinational corporation and you have big government. Is either one of them now worse than the other, or are they just as bad as each other?
Again, I'd leave that up to the audience to sort of decide. I think we will have different opinions upon it. I think what the film shows is a power struggle, and who's dominant or not. You know, it's really quite a small state trying to sort of get control over the resources. You know, challenged by huge oil industry, and that was what it was like. And to me, as a Norwegian, knowing how it sort of turned out in the end, I feel like this is like sort of the antagonist also has some kind of heroic element to them, because they secured our welfare, you know, of our generation.
In the credits of the film, there's so many different camera units, because you have the underwater unit, the island unit, all these different components. How many locations in all did you end up shooting in, and was it as difficult to shoot the underwater scenes as many people will have you believe, or did it come to you a little bit more easily than that?
We shot 5 different locations. It's partly due to the European co-production system. That wherever you get money from, you have to leave more than what you get. So you're then asked to go and find different locations around in Europe. But when it comes to the underwater stuff, it wasn't so hard shooting it, but that's because we spent such a long time researching where to shoot it and how.
Okay, cool. And I saw that there were 5 credited screenwriters on the project. Was that just a process that you just kept working and reworking, or is there something more to it than that?
I think part of the challenge with this script was we wanted to make a thriller, and we wanted to take these real events and blend them into sort of a dramatic thriller, and the process of doing so, you know, it took a bit of, because we did a lot of research, and we started out with what actually took place, and then we used these elements, you know, and molded them into sort of a more of a genre piece.
It was very cool. Well, it was a pleasure watching it. I'm glad I got to see it up here, and thanks for coming in and spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you.
Cheers, Erik.